So I am here with Billy Kilson, wonderful drummer, wonderful drum educator, wonderful person, and we're gonna have a little bit of a conversation here. I have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you. I've been studying with you for just this semester, so probably about what, 3 months. But I've been
Just
really,
about,
really,
yeah.
yeah, I've been really enjoying that. So I really respect you a lot, and this is super cool that you're giving me the time.
It's my pleasure, Chris. It's my pleasure.
So my first question is, when did you realize that you wanted to become a professional musician?
I mean, being a professional musician, not sure when. I think that might have happened while, believe it or not, while I was at Berkeley. But I wrote down a few notes, Chris, and you prepped me pretty well. And I thought about this pretty hard. And I did a interview for DW earlier this summer. And maybe I didn't think about it being a professional musician at that time, but on the path
Mhm.
to becoming a professional musician, I would say that's when I was 3. That's when my folks took me to a James Brown concert. And when I saw James Brown, and maybe I didn't understand it, and this is retrospective, but still, even now at 58, so that's damn, yes, 55 years ago, double nickel, right? 55 years ago. I have that same passion, that same force that I wanted to get, if you will, that James Brown did to me
Mhm.
as one of the persons in the audience. Him being so, it's like he was a magician almost. He hypnotized me from the stage, and I'm in this stadium, like, he has no idea. It's like, thousands and thousands of people. But just that part, I mean, how could he make me want to dance? And he did make me dance in the aisles. How could he make this 3-year-old dance? How could he make my dad, who was in his 30s at the time, how could he make him want to
Mhm.
dance? What was that about, man? And I've been on that quest ever since, I would say.
Yeah, I really love that. I feel like my story is relatively similar too, where it's like I went to a show and
Right,
there was a spark in that show that I never saw before. It's like it was always inside of me, it was always
right,
there,
right, right,
but
right.
that was just like the tinder. And suddenly
Absolutely,
it's this like whole world is opened up.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kind of going to the next question, who was the most influential musician or band on your drumming?
Well, I would still have to say, and that was one of I mentioned to you earlier. That's one of the two hard questions, and it's really difficult. You would think I would be able to answer that question because that's a common
Hmm.
question that a lot of interviewers would ask musicians. What's your favorite? What's your at the beginning? Who was your most influential, most inspiring person that made you want to play your instrument? And um, not to get too heady and to get very well, I'll try to make this simple. Lenny White. When I heard a record of Lenny White, it's called Streamline, and it's a fusion record. It's with Marcus Miller when he was like 16, 17. He's on there. Um, a lot of my favorite musicians ended up later being on that record. I didn't know who they were. Larry Blackman was playing piano, but I was 16, 17.
Hmm.
And a friend of mine said, "Okay, Billy, I heard you're going to go to Berkeley." Yeah, I guess I was 17. He said, "I heard you're going to go to Berkeley. If you're going to be serious about being a musician." Now, this was cute though, but he said, like, you got to check out this jazz drummer and check out this jazz album. And I'm thinking that's not a jazz album, but I'll check it out. But he played Lenny White. If anyone knows his playing, talking about having being a magician and hypnotizing me, I never heard anyone get around the toms the way he did. I mean, of course, Billy Cobham was super, super fast, but I didn't hear these flams. And like a lot of times, Lenny White will play these flams between the tom toms, not just on one surface. There's multiple surfaces
Mm.
that he's playing flams. and playing the flams from the cymbals. And I had never heard that. It's still playing a funk backbeat. So if I have to pick the guy that's probably the most influential at the beginning, yes. But as you know, um, via Tony Williams,
Hmm.
via Tony Williams taking me to Alan Dawson to this date. Once I started studying with Alan continually, Alan's the most influential drummer, no doubt, and most influential. The question is musician, and I would say Alan's the no question the most influential musician.
Hmm.
He taught me how to not only understand and hear music, and I would say Alan. Can I say slash? I would say Alan Dawson and Ahmad Jamal,
Okay.
because Ahmad Jamal. I never told you this. When I played with Ahmad Jamal, after my first 6 months into my first 6 months of playing with Ahmad Jamal, Alan kicked me out, man, and I cried like a baby. He said, "That's it, you know. Here's the Holy Grail. Um, you're gonna learn more from Ahmad Jamal than you'll learn from me." And I thought it was a joke, and I cried like a baby. And so he set me on my path, and I'm like the small little baby bird, like, oh gosh, and falling off. It's like, like he picks me up. You can do this. You can do this. No, I can't. You can do this. And he taught me how to be. Hopefully, as you said, taught me how to continue to teach me how to be a better teacher, and a
Yeah.
decent teacher. So yeah.
Yeah. So, are you saying that you studied with Ahmad Jamal, or you played with him, like in his
No,
band?
that's funny. That's funny. Yes, I did study with Ahmad Jamal, but I only played with him. So that's like the first school you would go to,
I
Chris,
see.
outside of Berkeley. Outside of studying with me, now you're on a gig. That's when you really begin
Yeah.
to learn your
Yeah.
craft, because
Totally.
you can everything is in fruition now. You're literally like that bird, and like, holy crap,
Right.
Alan's not here. You know what we do in our private lesson? And I would say, are you listening to the bass drum? That's not going to happen. Are you listening to bass, rather?
Yeah. No one's
The
gonna tell me
bass.
that.
No one's going to tell you that. The guy you're playing was like, dude, that's wrong. What are you doing? It's going to scare the crap out of you, man.
Yeah.
But that's where you learn. So yeah. I would say
Wow.
outside of Alan, Ahmad is a great influence and great musician, a great teacher as well.
So I guess that also kind of leads into the next question of what is it that you did getting right out of college? What was like the first gig or first job that you did after that?
First job, first gig that I did out of college. Oh, that's to be. I'll try to be nice, and I'll try to keep this G rated, but that's a scab that I don't want to open, man. It's a
Hmm.
lot of dirty stuff under that scab. If I answer that question, oh, that's almost a no-fly zone. We can speak
Hmm.
about that privately. Um, but let's say I didn't get a gig. I mean, I worked at there was a such thing as the phone company when I graduated college. I didn't have any gigs. I was one of the few of my class, my generation, amongst my peers and college classmates, was one of the few that graduated from Berkeley. So it
Hmm.
was almost like a sin to graduate from Berkeley. It's like, dude, you don't graduate from Berkeley.
Yeah.
You go to school by playing with Ron Carter or playing with Miles or playing with Ahmad Jamal, or you're doing a gig. You move to New York, you're playing a gig.
Hmm.
But if you don't have that, if you don't get that call by your fifth or sixth semester, it was like, oh man, you're a failure. It
Hmm.
was that kind of thing, man. Um, and which is crazy. That's terrible. But that was the whole vibe. So I did a regular 9 to 5
Yeah.
for about 2 or 3 years, and again, probably your mom would know what this is. It's a phone company, and not like going to AT&T or going to Apple and getting the phone. It's an actual phone company with the
Yeah.
operator and the whole 9 yards, man. And I did that for about 2 or 3 years. And my first gig was with the guy who was like my musical uncle, named Walter Davis Jr. He played with Charlie Parker when he was 17. So that was my first gig when I
Uh,
graduated
and
college.
what did you what kind of music was that?
Bebop.
Oh, sweet.
Bebop, straight ahead. His best friend until he died was Philly Joe Jones.
Wow.
They were best friends, and his one of his other best friends was Miles Davis. He took me to meet Miles when I played with Walter. We were
That's
in
awesome.
Pori, Finland. He knocked on the door because he's like, Miles, Miles, come on, man, open the door. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's Miles Davis. No, you can't say that. It's God. Don't say that, man. But I didn't know like I know now. Like if someone says, "Can I meet this person or meet that person?" I'm like, "Come on, man, come on." You're like, Billy, but you can't do that. Like, it's my
Yeah,
partner. So
yeah.
they were all like, um, I guess students, if you will, going students from the school of Charlie Parker.
Hmm.
Miles
Right.
played with Charlie Parker after Diz. Walter Davis played with Charlie Parker after Monk.
Hmm.
And Philly Joe played after Max and Roy and those guys. So they had their own kind of fraternity, if you will. So they were all partners. But yeah, that was my first gig.
Yeah. Well, that's really fascinating. Um,
Talking
my
about
friend.
perseverance, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think there's any shame in doing a 9 to 5 after college. Like I often kind of like I'll chide my partner sometimes when it's like I look at my friends list on Facebook. Someone friended me, says like goes to college at Berkeley and then works at Macy's, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of a sad story, you know. But it's a common story.
It's a
Um,
common story now, but in the 80s, it
mm,
wasn't a common
it was a
story.
different culture.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. In the 80s, that was probably the peak of the music industry. Maybe, yeah, mid to late 80s, absolutely. That's the
Hmm.
peak of the music industry. They were making tons and tons and tons of money. And
Right.
so, like, when I moved to New York, man, there were more gigs than there were musicians, really.
Yeah.
The gigs were plentiful. So that the goal was on the East Coast here was to, well, even if you anywhere you lived in the United States, was like go to Berkeley because that's the back door to getting to New York and doing live gigs. It's not like now, and that's what's sad. I mean, it's sad now. I think you could be pretty independent, in the '80s as a musician. I mean, just don't get me started with the economy and inflation and all that,
Yeah.
man. It's it's
Yeah. It's
it's
rough.
so you're right. Now you bet you might need to have two jobs as well as COVID. We don't have any gigs. Don't even.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
goodness gracious, man. But pre-COVID, yeah, you might have to have two jobs and have a gig.
Right.
It's much rough. It's harder now. It really
Hmm.
is.
Yeah. So I didn't even try, but I feel like these questions all kind of link into each other pretty well. um, my last question is, and perhaps we can do a couple more if any come up. But my last written question, planned question, is knowing what you know now. What is one thing that you wish you could have told a younger version of yourself?
That's relatively easy. Uh, it's going to be harder than what you think. It's going to be harder than what you think, or it's not going to be as easy as you think.
Hmm.
Would I change anything? No, not
Yeah.
one thing.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not taking that scab off now for you to see what's under there. Um, but that's all a part of the thread, if you will, and that's an important part, Or if I use another metaphor, all part of the quilt,
Hmm.
And maybe that's a patch that I really don't like, and I kind of like, I don't like that patch. Let's not look at that patch. But
Yeah.
that's all. I guess that's a better metaphor because, like, I'm proud of the quilt. Not every patch, but I'm proud that each part, and you know how quilts look, they're not
Yeah.
perfect and they're weird colors, but it's a perfect square. I'm not, hey man, I'm pretty proud of that. I've had and seeing you, and don't get me to start crying, Chris, but seeing you, and knowing from whence I came, and watching your growth and how that touches me, man, I wouldn't change a thing. Darn
Hmm.
right, man. You know. So I would tell that kid, yeah, it's gonna be rough, but
Yeah,
you can get through it, man.
it gets
Because the
better.
end, it does get better. Absolutely. These are my closing years, Chris. Now, don't get, I mean, I'm not saying I'm dying tomorrow, but these are my closing years, like, being able to, sometimes I get like someone will send me clips of, when I was playing drums maybe 25, 30 years ago. I'm like, wow, that kid had energy. I can't do that, man. So I'm enjoying this chapter of paying it forward, if paying it
Hmm.
forward, if you will. This is just as rewarding, and I didn't know it would be, but it's just as rewarding as I playing in a gig, and whether it's 10 people giving you a standing ovation, or I've been fortunate enough to be where it's 10,000 people giving you a standing
Hmm.
ovation. Uh, but having the one-on-one, and my students like yourself will say from the beginning of the session to the end, I didn't know I was going to sound like this, or I didn't know, or even at the end of the week, well, Billy, I didn't know that, if I looked at it this way or listened to it this way or that way, that is going to help me. That you guys have no idea what that does to me. You have no
Hmm.
idea.
Yeah, and I feel like that's it. That totally kind of goes back to the beginning, where it's like that spark, that the passion that was ignited by another musician, and how being able to pass that to other people and being able to foster like what's already there in other people. Um, for me, I feel like I've always had this desire to like touch other people's hearts with music.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
always
Hmm.
been kind of a thing from the
Hmm.
moment that I realized that I wanted to be a musician,
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
moment that I realized that it's more than just like playing notes on a page, or it's more
Hmm.
than just, I don't know, playing a couple of chords and singing. Um, and it's like I feel like I take this concept of being a teacher onto the stage too, where I'm not just trying to play the music. It's more than that. It's like I'm also
Hmm.
trying to educate people about like who I am, or
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm trying to say something. I want them to be not necessarily impressed. I could say that
Hmm.
if they hated what I was playing, I feel like that's
Hmm.
also kind of a response. Like that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay
um,
too. Yeah, because that's real, and that the response might not be what you like, but the response is real. It's a real
right.
response, and that's what you want.
In what
Absolutely.
exactly? Whatever response it is, like an emotional response is what
And
I'm looking
so,
for.
and emotionally, and then like what you did is what we really want to do if we're passionate about playing. Whether it's a positive response or negative response, we did our job very well because we touched them emotionally. Might not be the
Yeah.
emotion we like,
Yeah.
but we touched them emotionally. So that's pretty powerful, man. That's pretty powerful when you're far removed. And now it's, of course, it's uh, gratifying when the person can actually feel what you're attempting to transpire,
Mhm.
whether it's intentional or spiritual. But you're transpiring this positive. We are intentionally trying to transpire this positive energy. But if they receive it negatively, and like I mean, I don't have time to go into stories where I've been like, oh my gosh, man, never booed, but had bad reviews.
Mhm.
you know, um, but I've learned over my career, the worst response though is absolutely nothing like getting crickets. That means you did nothing, man.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone just gets up and just looks at you, like I've had gigs like this where guys just sitting there or ladies just sitting there, no emotion, very extremely stoic, and they might just get up and walk away. That's the
That
worst.
hurts. Yeah, that hurts.
Oh, that's the worst, man. That means you did nothing.
Yeah.
At least throw something, or
Yeah. Grab
like
some tomatoes.
please, man, do something, man. Stomp your feet or give me the
Yeah.
bird or something. Give me something, man. But jeez.
Yeah. That's Yeah, that's really, I have not had that experience quite yet, but I am not looking forward to eventually having that experience.
Well, I mean, you know, once I think that happened to me one or two times, and the older, the elderly musicians I was playing with, and it was early on in my career, and I was kind of, you know, of course, we're all pretty arrogant in our 20s, and so I was feeling pretty good about myself. And he mentioned to me as we were walking off stage, and I was so dejected and so rocked, and he said to me, "Now you realize." You know, you play for the musicians on the bandstand. You don't play for the audience. But Alan Dawson would say we have to play for the audience. He would say that though. He
Yeah.
said if you know it's important that they receive it because now he was thinking of a different head. You know, the business, they're gonna at that time he would say they're gonna buy your record. It's not like, you know, okay, I'm gonna just
Right.
like be this clown. That's not what I'm saying. But you know, you have some integrity and just don't be integrity about what you're doing and knowing who is your listener. And again, he's from that school, and to have that discipline, like where you're not so full of yourself, and that was my fault.
Hmm.
I was so full of myself. I played for myself.
Yeah.
And Alan, every teaching, he would always say it's audience, the listener, bandstand. Then it's the audience, listener, music, bandstand, and then you.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, and I did that backwards. It was all me that day, and
Yeah.
I got spanked for it.
Yeah.
You know, I got spanked for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I have also come to that conclusion about music myself of like that Alan is talking about that. To me, I feel like connecting with the audience is often the most important part. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like, yeah, it's great to have a relation, like a working relationship um, with your band partners. That's
Hmm.
wonderful, and it's great to play for them. But
Hmm.
if you're just like this, and you're just kind of
Hmm.
looking at each other, and you're all like sort of facing inward,
Hmm.
it's a lot harder for someone who's watching that to be like, yeah, I feel like a part of this,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's like the most important part. And it's like it just goes back to the teaching thing, like wanting to be a teacher, wanting to be able to convey information to the audience is really
Yeah,
really
it's all
important.
about being relatable, you
Yeah.
know, and I've applied that to teaching as well. I don't know if you ever check my resume. When you bored, you can take a look. But and it's pretty healthy. However, I can count how many bands in my resume on one hand that we were very successful. Oh, no, not we were very successful. Most bands I played with were successful, but in my eyes, that were the most cohesive, the most relatable when we were like one person, where we
Yeah.
elevated the bandstand and there was a huge invitation, if you will, come to the bandstand, you know, mentally not bum rush the bandstand and like kick over my drums. I'm not talking about that. But you know, like just so inviting. I can and how everyone was so unselfish.
Yeah.
And when you say, even though we could be metaphorically, we might be like this, you know, we might be just staring at each other and looking at each other, you know, and all in tune, but there was this weird thread, if I can say that, you know, where, you know, people in the audience felt like we would like let's say if I'm playing and I would look over and wink and say, "Come on in, man," you know,
Yeah.
"Come on
That
in."
totally 100%. There is nothing I love more than seeing musicians on stage smiling.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely,
there is nothing that's
absolutely.
like that. Where and that's that. I might get a bit of flack for saying this, but I notice that is lacking in a lot of Berkeley bands. Like when I go to a calf show or go to a recital, it's like people are just kind of playing their instrument. It really bothers me
Well,
because
I
it's
take
like
that
music's
as a
supposed to be fun, right?
well, I take that as like if it's a student and to defend them, and if that's me, I would be nervous in the fact in the sense, especially at Berkeley, and there was so many great
Right.
musicians.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm thinking they don't like what I'm playing anyway, or
Mm.
It's that paranoia, like, I must sound awful anyway. And so that's almost like your armor.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of, I'll take the flack. I'm a little older than you. Jazz musicians, they can be somewhat snobbish.
Mm-hmm.
Even rock musicians can be snobbish, like, you don't get what we're doing.
Yeah.
And but those bands that are successful, they are inviting, and you can tell. I mean, that's how they sustain. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how they sustain.
Just to invite people in, and then.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I gotta get ready for my next.
Yeah, I was about to say, really, really great speaking with you, Billy. I think that there's a lot of insight that can be mined from this conversation and all of the conversations that I'm sure we'll have in the future.
I'm looking forward to the next semester. You've been a joy this whole semester, and you're such a treat to hang out with. I hope your mom doesn't beat me up, because we did a lot of talking, man, during our classes. I didn't teach you too much, man. I hope she doesn't beat me up.
You teach me plenty. Yeah, you absolutely teach me plenty. Yeah. I'll cool. Make sure to defend you if she wants to get the fisticuffs up.
Well, no, my arms too short. My arms are too short. She has good. I got those alligators, the gecko arms, man. I'm gonna run, Chris. So good luck with the interview, and have a great holiday if I haven't said it early, and have a well-deserved break.
Yeah, please. You too as well, Billy. Thank you
and
so
stay
much
safe.
For taking the time.
My pleasure. I'm glad it worked out. Stay safe. I'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.